up, everybody? Welcome to Bios3 Raw TV. Today we're going to go over something that I get many questions. You fix this fucking camera angle. Yeah, make it square. I get a lot of questions about, and it comes from both directions, on how to be a better bodybuilder, how to be a better athlete, also how to beat addiction. And it's kind of like, what people don't understand is it's the same thing, same tools that you use to be a better bodybuilder are the same tools that you use to beat addiction. It's actually the same exact thing. It's applied in another way. So I figured what we'll do is, I've definitely put up a video in the past. I mean, it's like 1,100, 1,200 videos up. I don't know where the fuck it is. But I started talking about the 3 selves. And I don't think each self needs its own video. So we'll do all 3 of them in here today. If there's more that you guys want to know about it, maybe we'll continue on and do more of the selves. But this is actually for self-help to better yourself in general in life, which will fold over into or roll over into bodybuilding, addiction, whatever the case may be. Now, years ago, probably I was like about 20 years old or something like that, maybe 19, maybe even, maybe 19, 20. One of my best friends in the world, Christina Late, had given me a book for my birthday, I believe it was, or Christmas, called The Way of the Peaceful Warrior. Now, Christina was way ahead of me maturity-wise. She's probably 3 or 4 years younger than me, but she was way ahead of me maturity-wise. We were like, her and Henry are my 2 best friends in the entire world. When people ask me about my best friends, those are the 2 that I name. So she would always give me these books on like self-help, bettering yourself and stuff. She felt like it was really important to do this stuff. And the Celestine Prophecy was one which basically guides you through life, saying that there are signs you have to look out for. There's no coincidences. And The Way of the Peaceful Warrior, which was understanding yourself and how to change your situations based on yourself. Okay, so I guess it's like a self-help thing. So the follow-up to it was No Ordinary Moments is the name of the book. A Peaceful Warrior's Daily Guide. Dan Millman is the author. And for those of you that don't have access to the book we're going to talk about right now, you guys can go ahead and pick this up. I've had this literally for years. The pages are actually turning brown on it. I've had it so long. So the 3 selves, okay? In each one of us, there are 3 selves. There are 3 personalities inside of you. Like we all split personalities, nothing like that. But you can identify a situation and what's going on by identifying which one of your selves is acting at this moment. You can also control which self you react from, one of your 3 selves. The first self is the basic self. Okay, this is the one, I'll just read the description. It says, the basic self has sometimes been called our inner child. Because of the qualities, the motives, and the characteristics of this consciousness closely resembles those of a 4 to 7-year-old child. And we all have this in us. Like young children, basic selves share common qualities, yet some basic selves show more strength, confidence, and understanding than others. Although sometimes I use the term subconscious or inner child, I generally prefer the broader term basic self. Okay? So this is the self where you just fly off the handle and get mad. You get up in the morning, you get a flat tire, you're like, motherfucker, flat, I can't fucking believe this bullshit. Of course this is going to happen to me today. It's that immediate temper tantrum. It's that immediate, that first initial, oh, why me, blah, blah, blah. It's a tantrum. It's an absolute temper tantrum, excuse me. It's also when, things happen and you are most greedy. Me, I want a new bike. I want a new car. I want this. Why can't I have that? You sound like a little kid. So essentially it's your inner child, your inner little kid. The next self is the conscious self. The conscious self serves as the center of logic, reason, and discrimination, all necessarily tools for life. Its major function involves consciousness learning so that we can better adapt to thrive in our environment. You use the term consciousness, self, or conscious mind and ego interchangeably. When working in harmony, our conscious self guides, educates, and reassures our basic self as a parent would a child. Okay, so now, here's how the conscious self works. When I go outside in the morning, I see the flat tire, I'm like, mother, son of a... And your basic self starts to take over your conscious self, my conscious self now, which I didn't really have one back in the day. My basic self just fucking took over everything, and I acted on it. That's why I was such a dick and such an asshole to people. I wasn't conscious, using my conscious self. The conscious self says, all right, let's calm down. We got to get to work. It's just a flat tire, okay? You didn't fucking get shot in the head. It's not like you're in the middle of fucking Uganda being chased by a fucking lion. It's a flat tire. Let's get this shit done. It's like soothing to the basic self. So you have this kind of inner battle going on. Your conscious self takes over, and that's the one that's logical. Okay, what do we have to do to get this done? All right, let's get the jack out. Let's change the thing. Let's fix the flat. Whatever the case may be, we got to get to work. We'll deal with this after work. you get to work, and then after work, it's like, okay, I got to get to the shop, get the tire changed. Like, that's your conscious self taking over. And that is something that balances the basic self. Now, I think as you get older and more mature, that conscious self seems to take over more and more. Now, again, I also completely agree with the fact that maturity has to do with you using your basic self less and less and more of your conscious self. And the next one that we're going to talk about is the higher self, okay? So the higher self is a radiant aspect of our consciousness, sometimes referred to as our guardian angel. Completes the trinity of the three selves. The higher self manifests qualities of self-courage, love, compassion, wisdom, altruism, and joy. It serves as a cheerleader to the soul, reminding the conscious self of the spiritual possibilities beyond the material world and the limits of conscious mind. Now, your higher self, okay? An example of your higher self. There are people in my life that if it came down to it and there's a gun being pointed at us and it was to take a bullet for them, without a doubt, my conscious self, the logical says you don't want a bullet in your head, but my higher self says take that bullet, okay? So that you are putting someone else or something before yourself, okay? When you first get a puppy, or even with Bruno, he's 11 years old, and I look at him in the morning, and I think nothing but, look how amazing he is. I love this dog. He is the best thing that's ever happened to me in my entire life. That is your higher self. It just shows love no matter, I mean, he could pee on the floor every fucking day. He could throw up in my fucking bed every day. He could come up and bite me in the ankle, but I still love him regardless. It's unconditional love. Your higher self showing that love. And the older you get, the more I feel compassion you have for other people and things. You know, when I was younger, the basic self would take over pretty much all the time. And I could give a fuck less if maybe if I ran over a fucking squirrel back in the, you know, when I was in my early 20s or my teens. If I ran over a squirrel, like, oh, I ran over a squirrel. About 5 years ago, this is a completely true story. I throw a little story time in there. I was driving on the way home in the back roads, and this squirrel fucking ran out in front of the car in front of me. And it hit the fucking squirrel. And I'm watching this, and I'd actually never seen a squirrel killed before, which is kind of fucking weird because I was like 36 years old or something. And immediately I felt such compassion and, I don't know, regret. I don't know what you would call it. But immediately I felt so bad for that squirrel that I got home and I was visibly upset. And I remember Carrie asking me, say, what's wrong? I said, you know, I just watched this squirrel get, and it wasn't the guy's fault driving. The squirrel darted out in front of it. But my higher self completely took over in the moment and actually felt compassion for this injured animal. And I guess ever since, not necessarily that turning point, but ever since a certain point in my life, my higher self does take over, and I allow it to take over. And I think more with my higher self than I do with the conscious self or the basic self. The basic self is probably the least amount of consciousness that I use now. My conscious self is, I'd say logically, I have to force myself to use my conscious self in situations rather than use my higher self. And I don't know if it's a conditioning thing. I don't know if it's a thought process. I don't know if it's a coming to terms with the way the world is, the way that, you know, the universe interacts with each other. But the first thing I think of, you know, like, how do you beat addiction? My higher self says, you don't need drugs. You don't need drugs. Look at your life. You're enjoying your life. You're enjoying the people in your life. You're putting out positive is coming back. Yeah, I have some negative rants sometimes, but that's for fun. You know what I mean? And I get positive stuff from that. We all have a good laugh. But the bottom line is that conscious self reminds me that the higher self reminds me that I have a lot of joy in my life. I have a lot of fun. I have a lot of these things that make me feel good. And I'm reaching out to other people and that makes me feel better. Also, my higher self is constantly in charge. And then every once in a while, my logical self will say, okay, here's a situation. Like, you know, let's go right, you know, let's be fucking balls honest. You know, Carrie and I, when we split up, that wasn't an easy situation. It wasn't a fun situation. It was something that hurt. Now, regardless of whether we decided to walk away like together or not, the bottom line was my conscious self now had a choice where I could either let my basic self take over and say, okay, let's get high, let's get drunk, let's do this shit because I don't want to feel this, fuck that, it happened to me, blah, 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 blah. Or my conscious self could be in control and logically say, okay, we could do that, but here's what happens afterwards. You're still in the same situation. You made it a lot worse. You've come so far in the last 13 years of not doing that and learning about yourself and how to deal with your problems. You will take a giant step backwards and have to fight your way back again. Like, this is your conscious self talking to you, that it's not even worth going and getting high. It's not even worth getting drunk. It's not worth any of those things. Stay the course. Remember, the higher self is telling you, this is pain right now, but there's so much joy ahead in your future, so much love, so much, all these different things in your future that right now that conscious self can fight off the basic self with the needs to do drugs and be okay. And the three of these selves will get together. The basic self will bitch about it sometimes. The conscious self, the logical conscious self will say, okay, this is the situation, but this, and it'll look at it from all sides. And then the higher self says, you know what, in the grand scheme of things, you have your health. You have people around you, you have family, you have loved ones, you have all these great things going on. In the grand scheme of it, it could be so much worse, so what's the point of being mad about it? So you have this balance with this trinity of selves, which I think is super important for people to learn. And I mean, I had this book for a long time. I read it and I was like, what the fuck? I didn't understand it. It took me reading this book over and over and over again, different pieces of it, trying to comprehend it, until I realized that I was going through these three selves consistently, and they were all battling for control over me. I mean, I was battling control over myself. Until I finally gave in and said, okay, where do you really want to be? I mean, do you want to be with the basic self all the time, who's always fucking cranky and grumpy and having a fucking pissed off mood, and all they want to do is have fun, and when they can't, they just bitch? Or do you want to look at things logically? Sometimes I don't want to look at things logically. Or do you want to just say, you know what, I'm going to hope for the best and do the best that I can, and I'll be as good as I possibly can to everybody, hope that comes back to me, and then whatever that doesn't stir up, the conscious self will deal with logically. So these are the three selves that I hope that you guys can really grab onto and start understanding some things about yourself. Like the next time you come into some kind of predicament, stop and say, is this the basic self, the conscious self, or the higher self? Which one is this right now? And then decide which one, because the basic self, it's all right for them to take over once in a while, but not all the time. So it's important to have that balance. So you need to learn balance and how to identify what's going on when, and when it's okay to use what different self. Yeah, it's got a little deep. Bios3Training@gmail.com. Leave comments down below, but don't fight. www.bios3training.com is a blog. It's the one bicep for all three personalities, and we're out.